Welcome to the very first video on a topic that is of great importance and love for me, which is around waking up. So in this specific video, my purpose is to ensure that I really explain the basics of what waking up is, why it's important, and how we are going to bring this sort of practice to the Wholeness Collective. So sit back and enjoy while I dive right in. All right, so waking up. What is it? If you're here in this community, there is a chance that you've probably had an awakening. That is a spiritual awakening, wherein you have had foresight and direct experience into a reality that is beyond time. And that is really what we are speaking about when we are referring to waking up. We are waking up from time. We are waking up from the idea that we are strictly a mind and a body. And we are waking up to, or rather remembering, which is probably a better way of putting it, that who we are is awareness or consciousness, which cannot be known by any other faculty other than consciousness itself. Okay, so there's a lot here that we can unpack, but I'm going to just speak to the basic experience, what it's like to wake up. Now, of course, there are many traditions that have dedicated their entire methodology to this. So the yoga, for example, is all about uniting, right? I think the word yoga actually means to unite. One with the eternal ground of being, which they often refer to as Brahman. Okay? In the Zen tradition, it's not as, I would say, direct, right? In the Zen tradition, they speak a lot about Satori, but the means to Satori are quite senseless in the Zen tradition, and it's filled with paradox, which is why they use Zen koans. Okay? So there is a methodological way, but there is also a spontaneous way. And if your journey has brought you here, at this stage in the evolution of consciousness, I assume that you've had a spontaneous awakening, because that is the trajectory, right? That is, at this stage in the evolution of consciousness, that's what appears to be most prevalent right now. Many people are having mystical experiences or spiritual awakenings unplanned. And what a gift that is. And I must say, even people who've done a lot of spiritual practice, the insight comes as it also appears spontaneously. Anything that happens spontaneously in regards to waking up occurs outside of time, and therefore it's very surprising to the mind and body. Right? When it happens, the mind often feels quite shocked. Right? And so, how is this different from religion or belief? When you have an experience of waking up, it has a not only a numinous quality, but also this sense of objective truth, when you've had an authentic awakening, you feel in your bones that you have encountered a capital T truth, right? And this capital T truth cannot be named, right? That is why they say in the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And so the best that we can do is point to it. That's why, in Taoism, they did a brilliant job of pointing to it. Another way of getting there is by deconstructing what is untrue. And in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, they refer to this as neti neti, not this and not that, right? And so in our particular methodology here is going to use, I would say, 3 main tools of recognizing our essential nature. One of them is meditation, not mindfulness, not paying particular close attention to an object of experience, but not manipulating experience whatsoever. That is really the essence of meditation. And in our community, that is what I'm going to emphasize the most, right? Is meditation wherein we are not trying to change our experience or even pay particular close attention to an object of experience such as the breath, but rather we are recognizing what is true behind experience. In other words, we're paying attention to the background of experience, which is something that one of my favorite teachers, Rupert Spira, often emphasizes. So that's one tool. The other tool is going to be self-inquiry. Now, self-inquiry can be used in many different ways, and through the work of John Prendergast, self-inquiry is used as a way of discovering our core limiting beliefs that are stored often in the body. Okay? But for the sake of waking up, for the sake of this particular project, we are using self-inquiry to deconstruct what is not true. And we are using self-inquiry to see or discover or fall into what is true. And so the great sage Ramana Maharshi used a very powerful, simple question for self-inquiry, which was, who am I? Now, when you ask that question, instead of trying to find the answer with the mind, you allow the question itself to unravel, you could say naturally, and take you to the felt experience of I, which is pure awareness. Now, this may all be sounding quite abstract, so don't worry. We will be getting into the details, as the pillar evolves. But for now, it is important to know that waking up in this particular community will involve those 2 practices. And one more thing about just self-inquiry as it pertains to the waking up pillar. The question, who am I, has to come from the deepest source of your being. Otherwise, it won't work. And so you actually have to care when you ask that question, which is real devotion. When you ask that question from sincerity, it will take you to the answer, right? And not to wax poetic too much here, but there is another quote from a great saint who said that the point is not to find the answer, but to abide in the place where no questions and answers exist. That is true freedom. And that's what we want to contact when we are doing self-inquiry and meditation. We want to contact and abide in that placeless place of transparent awareness and freedom. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's the use in all of this, right? Sounds quite abstract at first. It's quite simple. Many of us, even ones who have had awakenings or who have had mystical experiences, we are so caught up in the content of experience. We are obsessed with our life situation. Most of us are dedicating our time toward just improving our life situation. I need to make more money. I need to get a better job. This relationship is not working out. I need to find a better partner. There's this sense that nothing is quite fulfilling. And the mature spiritual practitioner eventually reaches a stage where they recognize, actually I just had a session with a beautiful human where this exact realization occurred, right? That nothing in experience, even the best experience can never bring true fulfillment because experience itself is wrapped up in time. So if you are just trying to improve your life situation, you are essentially playing a game where you are bound to lose. Because time itself will run out and you will die. And so it is perhaps of the utmost importance that we place our attention on the timeless, which is beyond thought. In fact, Krishnamurti defined time as thought itself. The moment you're caught up in thought, you're in time. That is why we love deep sleep, because deep sleep actually reflects, is the perfume of the timeless state of being, which is our natural state of being. There's so much more that I could unpack here. But again, we are speaking about a reality that must be experienced. Again, even the word experience doesn't quite cut it, in order to understand. And that is why these practices of meditation and self-inquiry are going to be so important in this community. Now, I did mention that there was a third tool that we're going to be using, and this is associated with devotion. In India, it is referred to as Bhakti Yoga. And for many saints and sages, Bhakti Yoga is the easiest path toward self-realization. That doesn't make it simple, especially when we have a lot of conditioning. But it is certainly the easiest if you have an open heart and if you are sincere. And so, if you are familiar with the Christian mystics, the elements of devotion of Bhakti Yoga is very present there. But we don't want to cast out any other methods. And so you will see here, and this is a very important point, that depending on your personality and karma, there will be a particular path that feels more resonant to you than others. If you are an intellectual type, you will probably lean more towards Zen or the Advaita Vedanta tradition, which has to do with deconstructing the mind itself. And that is when you will reach wisdom. If you are an emotionally intelligent individual and you have an open heart and your capacity to love is great, you will probably lean more toward a devotional path, right? And then there is the path of yoga, which is quite systematic, right? Indeed, in the Yoga Sutras, there is a system that if you follow as a science, will take you home. And that's not to say that these all can't collapse onto each other and work as a symphony and be in harmony with each other. But to begin, especially at the very early stages, there's one particular path that will probably resonate with you more than others. And so my invitation for you is to journal about and understand what your particular predicament is and what you feel more confident in moving forward with respect to these different paths, right? So the ultimate path is pathless because awareness itself is not a path, it's beyond time. But again, we're working with paradox here. There will be a particular path in time that you feel more obliged to. Okay, so it has been I'm nearly close to 18 minutes. If you have stayed, thank you. This was just an introduction to waking up, and as I said, in the content that follows from this video, there's going to be a more systematic breakdown of the practices, okay? And I'm also going to be recording guided meditations so that you can actually contact and abide in awareness, because if we're just working with concepts and theory, we're not going to get anywhere, right? And that is what the Zen tradition did so well. In the Zen tradition, philosophy, highfalutin philosophy, is really pointless, right? They gave you koans and they told you to sit, because the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. I really look forward to hearing your guys' comments below. Please do comment below and engage with this content. I would love to know what spoke to you, what resonated, and how you're going to implement it into your daily life. All right, so I'll see you on the other side, and thanks again.